Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Thursday, August the 30th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And we're actually off to a little bit of a late start today, but that's okay. I kind of got caught out in school bus traffic, which is a real fun thing to get caught in because you just hurry up and wait all the time, right? And it's a great opportunity to practice patience and feeling good no matter what's going on and remembering Wendy's credo that everything's always working out for me. So that's what I was practicing, Wendy. Everything was working out for me as I went block by block, stop by stop, just saying, everything is working out for me, right?
And did it feel good while you were saying that?
Strangely enough, it did, which was really irritating.
Why is that irritating? That to me is the joy in making such a shift that you actually believe everything's always working out for you.
Well, that's true. But, I mean, it's irritating because that's not my normal pattern. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I just shifted.
Oh, Walt, that is so funny. So you got irritated when you made a shift to feel good.
Exactly, yes.
Yes. That's very funny.
Let the therapy begin.
Yeah, really. Well, it does always work out for us. And really, what's the big deal? We don't have that many listeners that listen live at this point. So it's not actually, like it affected a whole lot of people.
We have one more. Because one of the reasons I was late was because I had to take one of our employees home, and he asked me how to connect to listen to the live podcast. So I think he's probably listening live today. So we actually got one more new listener out of it, which is a good thing.
Well, yay. Yay. But it's not the same thing as like being on broadcast radio where it's like literally dead airtime.
Yeah, that wouldn't be so good. Well, even there, they don't have dead airtime. They just, play 5 records in a row or something like that.
Yeah, well, and for us, it's like people, if they're looking for it, they'll either sit around waiting for us to show up or they'll come back later and go, oh, well, there's the show,
This is true, yeah. I kind of like to keep the schedule good. And normally it is good. Normally we're right on the hour. But, every once in a while, there's a little bit of slip. That's okay. No big deal. That's the way I look at it.
Because everything's always working out for you.
Oh, I forgot that part. I'm sorry.
And, now that you're posting to LinkedIn, I shared the post from our last show on Tuesday.
Oh, great.
And somebody that I had just made a new connection with, she commented, apparently she listened to our show.
Oh, nice.
And said that it was about the affirmation, everything's always working out for me.
Right, yeah, that's right.
And she said that was especially helpful for her. So that was a nice kudos. I appreciated her sharing that. She didn't have to. I know people enjoy our show, but it doesn't mean that people often comment. And so the fact that she did, that made me feel good.
Well, yeah. It also kind of reaffirms that what we're doing is working. The intention of a daily dose of happy is to help somebody feel better and to help lots of listeners feel better. And fortunately, more and more are listening. So if we're doing our job and it's actually working, hey, great. This is more than worthwhile. This is wonderful.
Absolutely. And so I have like a perhaps topic, at least this is where my thoughts are for right now.
Okay.
We'll see if it completely launches in that direction.
Yeah.
But since I had a few minutes to think about, gosh, what would our show topic be? Because I've been thinking about it all day and nothing really was coming. Until you said you were going to be late. And I went, okay, well, now I have time to really focus on this. And the thought just popped in, like living life with law of attraction. Like, what is it like to live every day, just in the minute details of knowing the principles of law of attraction? What does that look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? How does it play out? And so I think you kind of started with it, which is, you were heading home, coming to start the podcast. And because you live a life using law of attraction, while you were running late because there were all the school buses, you were employing an affirmation that you knew everything always worked out for you.
And it was working out, by the way. The school buses were everywhere, so I'm not sure that I could have completely avoided them. But to a large extent, they were moving out of the way, which was really nice. School buses don't normally do that, School buses normally stay right where they are, right?
Well, and I was, just thinking about, well, how does my life operate today with the awareness of law of attraction versus when I didn't have it. And I have to say it flows so much smoother. I feel like many of the life questions that I had in the past feel answered, and like I know what to count on. And that's a really nice feeling. It gives me, certainty is something that is really important to me, which, some people might call being in control. I like to know what I can count on. And what I love about law of attraction is I can count on law of attraction to always do what it always does without fail.
This is true.
And I like that, because that to me is like, yeah, I can take it to the bank. I can count on this. It makes me feel certain. And I do appreciate that.
It's an interesting kind of safety built into that, isn't it? I mean, I don't necessarily think that we normally think about the law of attraction as being safety, but it is, because, like you said, we can count on it. It's as sure as, it's even more sure, apparently, than the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, although I'm not quite sure how it's more sure of that, but it's at least as sure. How about that?
Well, I think the sun setting and rising is because law of attraction is behind all of it.
Oh, okay.
That's what I think, because someone's, some entities, some beings, source energy, once upon a time put a lot of thought into the whole planetary system, and even those thoughts are still being governed by law of attraction.
Not to mention the fact that they invented the words east and west, which also helped.
Well,
because otherwise we'd be really confused. I mean, you can imagine, well, the sun rises somewhere. I don't know where it rises. I don't have a word for that.
I don't know. Well, and that takes us off onto a completely different tangent. Does it really rise, or is it just simply because the Earth is rotating?
Okay, so if you're going to bring science into it, let's just be really dull about it.
Like I said, that kind of goes into another tangent. But, my whole Project X, which is about me creating a new career for myself, has been launched absolutely 100% because of law of attraction, because I've come to trust the principles of law of attraction being so certain. I can count on them. I can count on the principles. What I can't always count on is me trusting and believing. That was my work.
That's the part that drives me crazy, trying to keep up with my own self and my own foibles, and trying to and not only keep up with them, but trying not to think of them as foibles, trying to remind myself I don't ever get it wrong. It certainly seems like I do, but no, I'm not actually getting it wrong. I'm just taking a different direction.
Yeah. And ever since I left the corporate world, which now has been almost 2 weeks, it was interesting because people were asking me at my old job, oh, so are you going to take time off? Are you going to go on a vacation? Are you going to go somewhere? What are you going to do? And I said, oh, no, I'm ready to launch right in. Well, I think mentally I was ready to launch right into my new career, but physically and emotionally I wasn't, and I haven't been. And that kind of has caught me by surprise because I've been really tired. I mean, really tired. And I get enough energy to do something that maybe lasts me about 30 minutes, and even if it was doing something at the computer, it's like, oh God, now I'm exhausted. I need another nap. And, the one thing I'm so grateful for is that I have a good connection with my inner being, and that I understand how to ask questions and get messages, and I've been checking in on a daily basis. And, one of my habitual thoughts and questions is there anything wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Am I dying? I mean, I know that's an extreme, but it's like, how come I'm so tired? And I guess I had an expectation that I should have tons of stamina all the time, 24/7, especially when I'm no longer being governed by, I have to be at my job at 8:00 and be behind my computer and ready to roll. And I keep getting, everything's fine. Everything's good. So take a nap. Rest some more. I'm like, really? Yeah, rest some more. Okay. Am I ever going to have normal energy? And the answer is yes.
Of course.
And so here we are, 7 plus 5. So maybe I'm 12 or I don't know, a week and a half into, my new career. And in the beginning, all I could do practically was sleep. I mean, well, let me take it back. The first 3 days, I had scheduled activities. And so I did them. And as soon as the scheduled activities kind of waned, that's when the fatigue just really became very prominent.
Mm-hmm.
And what has come to me today is you'll know when you're ready to roll because your energy will be there to meet it. It's like I don't know if you remember, but this was the idea that my inner being kind of brought to my attention. Like, do you remember being on summer vacation from school? And like the first couple days, the first week after school was out was total elation, because it's like, yay, you don't have to go to school. Yay, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
Well, there actually comes a point where doing whatever you want starts to get boring. And it's like, hey, Mom, I'm bored. What am I going to do? Go outside and play.
Go outside
I've already
and play,
done that. Now what? Go outside and play some more. But it's boring. Go play on the swing set. I've already done that. Play jump rope. There's no one to play with. Well, then call somebody. No, and it's like it gets boring.
And meanwhile, there are mothers all over the world listening to us, rolling their eyes as they hear this.
Right, because they're really happy that the school buses are running.
That's right.
Because that means their kids are back in school. But this memory came to me today, and I know it was my inner being's way of saying there's a natural phase where when you transition, just like when kids transition from being in school to being on summer break, then there comes a natural part that kids get bored. And they're actually ready to go back to school, even if they don't like school. It's like they're ready for a change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was getting an awareness that I will know when my energy has returned because I'll be bored. Because right now it's not boring to take another nap. It's not boring to play a lot of solitaire on my laptop. It's not boring to just sit in front of the television and veg. It's not boring to like put on my headset and listen to my meditative music. That has not gotten boring yet. But I do know that at a certain point when it becomes boring, that's like a vacuum energetically. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do something meaningful. So I was really happy that my inner being kind of showed me that today, and it gave me hope that I'm not going to be tired for the rest of my life. No, I'm not dying. No, there's nothing wrong. What I'm really sensing is that because of the level of stress that I put myself under in my corporate job, my job didn't require it of me, but it's just the level of attentiveness that I chose to give to that job, really wore me out.
Yeah, well, I think that's what happens anytime we make a big change. I mean, you made a big change in your life by leaving that job and taking on the Project X entrepreneurial career. And when you make any kind of a major change, there is always de-stressing that goes into the whole formula. And that's what you're going through. You're going through the de-stressing period, which is, the great part is you can do it. It's not like you're in a place where you have to go collect that next paycheck in order to survive. You don't have to. So you can actually do the thing that most of us would love to do when we make a big change. You actually get to de-stress, to remove the stress. Like, whoa, that's a good thing.
Well, and while I was working in my corporate job, I would take periodic 1-week vacations.
Yep.
And I kind of knew that 1 week felt like about all I could take in terms of not leaving my team with a giant, oh my God, when the hell is Wendy coming back? But I know that taking 2 weeks off, which I've done on a couple occasions, really made a big difference. And I remember after returning to work after 2 weeks, people would say, well, how are you? And I'd say, refreshed.
Yeah.
Like as in, it was so amazing to say I was refreshed, because most people don't live in a world of feeling refreshed. Most people do feel stressed most of the time.
And really, you are pretty much near the end of your 2-week vacation in a sense. I don't know how much longer your vacation actually is going to go.
And
that's it's the right
exactly
time
how I've been thinking of it.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking by Monday, that will be 2 weeks. And I kind of have a sense that by Monday, and if it's not exactly Monday, that's okay, but sometime by next week, I should start to bounce back energetically. I've had some awareness that I have just completely stressed the heck out of my adrenal glands.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And they need some time to refresh, which means they need to not be put in fight or flight mode.
By the way, there's an interesting thing happening on Monday. I don't know if you've made the connection yet, but what you're talking about is having left work in order to do the work that you want to do. You're taking an extended leave between, and Monday is Labor Day.
It's Labor Day.
Right?
Well, I will not be laboring.
It's almost ironic, really, the path that you're on leading up to Labor Day.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. Thank you, Walt.
You're welcome.
But, this is because I understand law of attraction. That is because of that, I have greater certainty that all is well because I understand how law of attraction works. And meaning, I know what thoughts I've been habitually thinking, which is about my new career and about being in health and about being refreshed and excited about doing what is fun for me, doing it with a level of creativity, not with stress and force. And so if I want to do it from a non-stressful place, I have to de-stress my body. I have to de-stress my mind. And what I know, like going back to, being out of school during summer break, I remember when I got bored, what came next, because I wasn't ready to, school wasn't coming back yet, I started getting creative. I started doing crafty things. I started spending more time in my garden because I had a garden in my teenage years. Mom and Dad let me have a space in the yard, and I planted things, and I got very creative, and I really enjoyed that. But that usually came after just getting really bored. And so I'm so grateful that, my inner being just showed that to me and went, this is your natural pattern, Wendy. You do a whole bunch of nothingness, to me, sleeping, reading, watching TV, solitaire, those I call nothingness. I do a lot of nothingness. And then I get bored, and then I get creative. So it's like, oh, I'm right on target. All is well. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's broken, and I'm not going to die.
Which is good. That's good. Hey, let's play life coach for a second here, okay? Because most people, there are probably people listening right now who have gone through some kind of major transition recently. And most of them, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, normally don't get that period you're getting right now of just being able to do the complete de-stress. And yet, when we go through a transition like that, we need to. So, let's say somebody came to you and said, look, I just went through this major event and I need to find a way to de-stress, and I really can't afford to take the time off to go do what I would like to do. So what do I do? If somebody comes to you with that kind of a question, I don't know, maybe you've already gotten that question in the past, but if you get that kind of request, they can't actually take the time to de-stress. What can they do? There's got to be something that somebody can do who's in that kind of place.
I spent 11 years in a corporate job where, of course, I got overwhelmed and burnt out from time to time, and I didn't have the luxury of taking tons of time off. So what I did was I spent a lot of time in meditation. I created a practice. Now, meditation looks different for everybody, but I started meditating every day for at least for an hour. And sometimes I did it during my lunch break. Sometimes I did it when I got off work. Some people, if they're morning people, can do it in the morning. But that hour that I spent in meditation, or for someone else, it may not be considered meditation. It may be where you just go sit in a chair and you just let your thoughts go wherever they want to. And if you fall asleep, it's okay. But for me, I found that after an hour, I did feel very different. I felt much more at peace. I felt a sense of calm, and I did feel the sense of refreshing. Because when you truly meditate, you let go of all resistance. And that's what we need to de-stress from, is the resistance of life.
Yeah. That's true.
So that would be my go-to, which is find a time. And if you can't do an hour, do 30 minutes. If you can't do 30 minutes, do 15. Just find a time in your day where you can make it all yours. And that you purposely don't think about anything of importance. You don't think about what you have to do next. You just take that time for yourself to just let it all go.
Well, that last bit kind of goes to where I was going to go with my question, which is, what does meditating look like from Wendy's perspective? I mean, you pointed out everybody has a kind of a different viewpoint of what meditating is. When you're meditating, what's your goal with meditation? What is it that you're trying to do?
De-stress.
Yeah.
my goal is to let go of resistance. Now, the way that I have done it effectively is I love technology, and so I use a product sold by a company called Centerpoint. I think it's centerpoint.com. And it's a product called HoloSync. And if anyone's ever heard of binaural beats, it's a process where you have to use stereo headphones where there's a left ear and a right. And there's purposely two different tones, and you can't hear them, but it's in the CD. Mm-hmm. There's two different tones, like they're 4 hertz apart. And the brain has to, like it's too distracting and uncomfortable for the brain to listen to two different tones. So it integrates those tones, and it literally interprets it as one tone, which is in the middle. And I don't understand all the science, but I've read enough about it to have a vague idea, which in the process of the brain integrating those two different tones, it does it through your neural pathways, and it I think of it like a roto-rooter. It literally just plows through where there are disturbances, which there's pockets of resistance that are attached to thoughts, and it just kind of clears them up. And to me, that's how it removes the resistance. And so it's really tranquil music. It works for me. It's the sound of rain and chiming bowls, and I've listened to it before the show. And it's really calming. It's just very calming to my entire being. And once upon a time on the show, I talked about how it was like the 3rd or 4th day I had been listening to this. This was years and years ago. And my mother-in-law called telling me a tornado was on its way to our town, and she lives just 2 miles away from me. And so I said, okay. And she said, okay, make sure you go to your place of safety. Well, of course, we all know if there's a tornado, you go to the lowest level where there's no windows.
Right. No glass.
I'm upstairs in my bedroom where there's lots of windows.
Uh-huh.
I went inside. I asked my inner being, like, should I go somewhere? And I got, no, it's not necessary. And I walked over to the window, and it's the first time I ever saw a tornado. I saw the tornado out of my window, but I had just done an hour of meditation. I was in the most tranquil place I'd ever been in. And I just had the wherewithal to talk to the tornado and tell it where to go and how to slow down. And it did. And where the rest of, my neighborhood was freaking out over the winds and the tornado and whatever, I was in the most incredible state of peace and calm. Now, I will tell you, I had no resistance. So anyway, that's a little side note, but that's how I do meditation. For me personally, I'm so highly distractible by everything on the planet. I mean, if I sit in a chair and I look straight across from my chair and go, oh, there's the fish tank. Gosh, I should clean that. Or, oh, you know what? That picture's slightly crooked. I should get up and move it. I just get distracted because I'm very visual. So for me, it's really important for me to have my eyes closed. And when I close my eyes, that is a sign for my body to fall asleep. And so all the things that I've heard don't do, I do, and it totally works for me, which is why I don't listen to, which is why when people say, well, this is how you have to do it, I'm like, maybe for you.
Yeah, I can see that.
But, I totally believe in do what feels good. And you'll know when you've meditated because you feel good. You feel refreshed. You feel peaceful. You feel calm. The stress of life doesn't feel like it's weighing down on you. Another way I meditate, I haven't done it this way in quite a while because I have someone who cleans my house, but sometimes house cleaning was meditative for me.
I know what you mean.
Many times when I'm vacuuming, it's a repetitive thing. It requires very little thought, but somehow it causes a sense of peacefulness for me.
For me, it's a case of if I'm in a place, particularly a place that I don't feel good, and I really want to work that energy out, just kind of shake it off and so forth. I'll go do one of the things I like doing least in the world, washing dishes, because it has the same kind of effect. For whatever reason, when I'm in that place of just nothing feels good at all, doing dishes will release it. I don't know why.
But if it works for you,
if it works, it works. Yeah, that's it. That's the bottom line.
I mean, I have one of my dear coaching friends, one of her most favorite meditative things is to go on a walk. Now, walking for me didn't put me in a state of meditation. Walking for me was exhilarating in different ways, but for her, it's meditative. And I know you've talked about that. And I've heard other people talk about it as a meditative walk. Like that is the way they meditate.
Mm. Yeah, there was an occasion just last week where I went out on my favorite place to walk on the Rails to Trails path that goes by the house. And this particular section heads a little bit south here, and it's all shaded, or almost all shaded. So even in the hot sun, it's a very comfortable place to walk. And on this particular day, I don't know what it was about the weather pattern, the light, whatever, but I got down to that one really, really nice section, and it just felt like nirvana. Now, outside of the shaded area, it was blisteringly hot. But inside it, it was just beautiful. It was cool. It was tranquil. There was this nice cool breeze coming through. And I'm doing my normal walking pace as I'm going through it. And then I stopped and I said, why am I rushing? I should just stand here and just enjoy it because it's just so beautiful. And I did. I mean, from that point on, for like the next 20 minutes, I was taking little baby steps to kind of reassure myself that I was still walking. But I didn't want to go very far, and I didn't want to go very fast. I wanted to stay there. It was wonderful.
And I think you said it beautifully. It was wonderful, which meant you knew how it felt.
Yeah.
And if it feels good, keep doing it.
Pretty much, yeah. I didn't have to be told twice on that one.
Well, and I think there's so many things that we can do that let go of resistance. We just have to be plugged into our feelings to know that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention, then I won't say it doesn't do any good, but it doesn't have the same level of benefit as when you go, wow, this feels good.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Good. In fact, there were a couple of conversations on Facebook that I briefly took part in. Both of them, I think they were women, both of them were women who were posting stuff about, being frustrated about applying the law of attraction. And, oh, by the way, they weren't actually feeling anything about the things they were trying to attract. And in both cases, I asked them, well, what other things are you feeling? And got the answer back. Essentially, they weren't feeling anything. They were numbed out to their entire lives. And I'm thinking, wow, they're really doing some blocking there and not realizing it. But when you're in that place, I mean, this is probably more than you can answer in a 2 or 3 minute answer. But how do you turn the feelings back on?
Well, first of all, nobody is feelingless.
Right.
People might say they don't feel, but they are feeling. They're just
level.
Not allowing themselves to be aware.
Right. Yeah, they're blocking it somewhere.
So, yeah, and so what I would do is I go hunting for things through suggestion, to let them recognize, oh, they do feel. It's just that when they're feeling, they're usually not feeling what they want to feel, so they're discounting it. But I'll say, well, when you came home from work, what did you feel? Nothing. Okay. So, and I'll just kind of go through the different activities. I'll ask them, well, what did you do after that? What did you do after that? And what did you feel there? And inevitably, somewhere, somehow, a feeling shows up. Well, okay. I saw my husband, and just looking at his face made me angry. Great.
Okay.
They're like, what? I'm like, great. Now right. You have a feeling.
Got a feeling, yeah, exactly.
See, you're not dead inside.
Yeah, right.
You do have a feeling. And so we just kind of, I go rooting around, as a life coach, looking for where they are having feelings so they can at least make the connection. Oh, I do have feelings. And then we start talking about where the numbness is. And, even numbness is a feeling.
Well, that's an interesting point. I don't really think about it normally that way, but you're right. It is a feeling. It's just kind of it's a numb feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it has a feeling because we define it. And so, I just kind of help them to reconnect to the fact they are actually feeling. And then we start talking about why they've labeled it that way. Why do they label it, I don't have any feelings?
Yeah.
Well, because they're disappointed. They're disappointed in the results in their life. Okay, well, when you start talking about that, it kind of loosens things up a little bit. And then we can start going to, well, what is it you do want to feel? And then they start talking about the positive feelings they do want to feel. And then I'll say, well, do you ever remember feeling that way? No. Okay, well, when you were 6 or 7, did you ever have one of those feelings? Well, yeah, I did. Okay, well, remember that. Tell me about it. And before you know it, they're talking about positive feelings and they're reconnecting with that.
Yeah.
And so that kind of loosens up the entire system
Yeah.
of feelings, and then we start working toward, now let's start paying more attention because the feelings are there. But, sometimes my job is to help them just know that they really are feeling. They just haven't allowed themselves to acknowledge it. And now it's time to start acknowledging feelings so they can start getting more connected on a more consistent basis.
Yeah. That's really what it comes down to, because you're really just trying to connect to that again. And it's not even so much reconnecting. It's just kind of remembering and recognizing, like, oh, yeah, there it is. It's been there all along. I just wasn't paying any attention to it.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the things with Facebook where I can't give the full answer that I would want to deliver in Facebook because it takes some poking and prodding.
Right.
And the reason, like, you haven't seen me on that particular Facebook page in a long time is because what I found is when I did provide an answer, the response was thanks, but blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I recognized that I could handle the but in a life coaching session when we're talking one-on-one,
right.
But it's much more difficult to do it with the written word.
Yeah.
Because it's not real time. And what I find, and this is one of the great benefits of having a coach, is to make a change, you actually have to be experiencing the feeling of something you don't like. And when you're just writing back and forth in Facebook, well, the person might have been feeling this deep emotional, when they first wrote their Facebook post asking a question like, how do I get out of this horrible feeling? But then by the time they start getting people's responses, well, maybe they've gone out to dinner since, or maybe they helped their child with homework, and now they're not in the same emotional place.
Right.
And so now they're just reading the answers, and now it becomes a mental effort, or just it's all mental. It's not in the feelings, and emotions anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's why I've kind of backed off because on occasion I'll feel led to do it, and I can tell whatever I'm writing is going to make an impact. But most of the time, I guess because I am a coach, I know how to do it live time.
Right. Oh, sure.
But I don't feel all that certain about doing it in posting time.
I have to admit, since I'm not a coach, I kind of feel like I can just explore all kinds of possibilities that a coach wouldn't necessarily dare to try. But I tend to kind of go a little bit for, I don't want to say it this way because it sounds wrong. Well, I'll say it anyway. I go for shock value, and I don't mean shock value in the sense of offending somebody or something like that. I mean shock value in terms of like a little bit of a wake up, something that just kind of does a little mental flip, and all of a sudden they're looking at it in a way that's different from the way they were looking at it before, just to see what kind of response I get out of them.
I get an email every time you post something. I don't go and look at it all the time, but for a while I was, and I would agree with you. You were going for the say something that causes a person to go, huh?
Yeah, right.
And I like that. I like that. Whether I agreed with your post or didn't, I'm like, yeah, but he's just trying to get somebody to think.
Yeah.
He wants somebody to think in a new way, and that's a cool thing.
Yeah. Because it's a limited form. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can really do in a Facebook post. It's just not possible. So.
Well, I also belong to a lot of Facebook groups that have to do with technical things. And I find that sometimes difficult too, because people have different levels of expertise. And so when they describe something, they may describe it too high level and not deep enough for me. But if somebody is saying you plug A into B, B into C, C into D, there's not that many ways to screw that up. But when you're dealing with a Facebook group, like for Law of Attraction, there's so many misinterpretation possibilities.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, one has to do with terminology. Two has to do with the level of understanding the terminology, let alone the words. Another thing is, what source did they learn their information from?
That's big. That's really big.
Because whether you learned it from like Christy Whitman's Law of Attraction coaching program, or whether you learned it from Abraham Hicks, or if you learned it from, some Eastern monk, whatever, because I know somebody who had been learning Law of Attraction through a monk. There's so many different ways that you can learn something, but everybody may define certain concepts slightly different.
They do, yeah. Neville Goddard followers, for instance, have a very specific way of understanding it that's quite different from the way other modalities are presented. I mean, it's the same topic. Yeah. It's the same general set of ideas, but it's just a different way of thinking about it.
Bob Proctor.
Bob Proctor, yeah, another one.
Polly is a little different. And so if you just blurt out a sentence and somebody has their own frame of reference, but it's not the frame of reference you're coming from, it may not make sense to them.
That's true.
Or, and so I that's where I find Facebook to not be the most effective communication tool.
One reason I continue to participate, though, in Facebook is every once in a while I get the opportunity to say, by the way, take a listen to our podcast because it fits in perfectly with what you're talking about.
Exactly. I've done the same.
And that works really well. I like that a lot. And inevitably, especially if it's somebody who you connected with on some level, inevitably you get a heart back and thank you so much. And I'll definitely check it out, that kind of thing. You feel like, yes, one more.
Yay. Well, I'm going to throw this out kind of for my own exploration just to see what your thoughts are.
Okay.
The last maybe week or so, even though I think I'm doing nothing, I'm still always doing something when I do nothing.
Of course.
I've had several introductory calls with several different people that have been recommended to me through my networking groups.
Nice.
And so I've been talking about marketing. I've been talking about different things, not only to market myself for personal coaching, but also how to market the next business that I'm working on simultaneously.
The empire.
And on my empire, yes.
That's right.
And it's interesting because as I've been talking, I think I've talked to 3 people. And as I've talked to each one, they all pretty much were taking me down the same path. And honestly, it was a path that I already was aware of. And I wasn't like, I've wasted my time, because each one kind of highlighted something in a way that made me remember, that's a good thing. Yeah, I knew that, but I want to remember that.
Well, that's good.
But the one thing that all of them had in common was coming from the perspective that, the only way to scale your business to really make, 6 figures a year plus is to create programs and products and blah, 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 blah. And I've kind of been, I'm not resistant to it, even though that was not my plan. And I'm like, okay, Wendy, don't be resistant, be open, think about it. And as I've been thinking about it, and I've said this to each one, I said, but I feel like creating these programs and products take me further away from my mission versus going closer to my mission. And I said, I really feel, and it came up in this conversation, I don't feel like I can give my best, clearest transformational work to people in Facebook that I'm not personally connecting with in a conversation.
That makes sense.
Okay. I feel like there is such incredible value in one-on-one communication.
Sure.
And even if it's a group call, even in a group call, you end up doing one-on-one and other people are listening.
Yep.
Okay. I feel there is so much value in that, because I'm helping people one person at a time. But when I talk to people who want to do marketing, they said, yeah, but you can't scale that because everything's dependent on you personally. And I'm like, I get that. And the only other way to really make it marketable is if I just charge more money, which I do. But, there's only so much. I can't say, okay, I think I want to start charging $20,000 a month, for 1 hour and, we'll do monthly calls. Nobody's going to hire me at that. And right. I get that. But there's something in me that's very deep, and I'm noticing it as I'm talking to different marketing people, and they keep wanting to send me down the direction of create products and programs that people can consume online. I'm like, I don't want to say I'm resistant to that idea. I want to say I have a preference that's different from that idea, because there's a distinction. I'm not saying no, because who knows, I may do that also. But I'm feeling like there's something brewing in me on a bigger level that has to do with the one-on-one personal touch.
Mm-hmm.
And like even you, and this came to mind the other day, like when we end a call, when we have time for it, you'll say, well, Wendy, if somebody wants to, reach out to you and get that personal touch that you have to offer, how can they find you?
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, personal touch. Whenever you say that, that just really resonates with me. Like, yeah, that's why someone should contact me.
Oh, yeah.
Is because they want personal touch. They want something that's customizable for them. They want to have a conversation. And like I'm very aware that right now I have a number of clients that I'm working with, and they're not really requiring the transformation work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
They're not requiring the quantum leap stuff that I do. They
mm-hmm.
each got that like maybe in their first session. But since then, they like to talk about how they've been processing their life. And then I share insights that they hadn't considered, or maybe, they end up with a question like, I've been doing this, this, and this, but now I have this question for you. What do you think of this? And so lately I've been more in the role of advisor or encourager.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that at the end of the call, they will give me feedback of how really valuable our time has been. And the insights that I share have just really moved the needle for them and made such a difference. And I'm thinking, this comes from personal touch.
Right.
This came from, I listened for 15 minutes and then said, would you like me to share something that I know about this subject? And like, yes, please. And then I might share. It might take me all of 2 to 3 minutes. And they consume it and go, whoa,
mm-hmm.
like that moved the needle for them.
Yeah.
And that's something that, on Facebook, okay, if you try to like do tit for tat, it's like, so the person talks for 15 minutes. Well, I don't know anybody who is going to write a post with a question that would take 15 minutes to read.
Sure.
Because we just don't do that there.
That's not what the medium is for.
Yeah, and even like digital products. I know I've consumed many digital products. But you know what? Everyone left me wanting.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is just me, but I wanted hand-holding. I wanted something that made me feel like I got something more personalized for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my expectations were probably inappropriate because you just don't get that from an online course.
Well, I wouldn't dismiss it that easily. I think you're onto something there.
Okay. So then, and these are all the pieces and parts that fit into this concept that I have right now. And I don't know the answer, but I feel like this is where I'm heading. Like, how do you give personal touch in a way that also can scale in my business so it's not completely dependent on hour for hour work? I know there's a way to do it. I just don't know what it is yet. But here's this other thing that happened. The other day, I got an email from one of the people that I follow. And he's all about digital marketing, but he has a friend who he works with that does his digital marketing with him, but also happens to do real estate on the side. And so he's like, hey, I'm asking this guy to share his real estate wisdom in case you're interested. Well, I've always been interested in real estate. So I'm like, okay, sure. When that webinar is ready to roll, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
So I get this survey, and at first I was a little annoyed because the survey was kind of like, tell us what you really want to know about real estate. And I'm like, oh, it's going to take time. Because everyone was an essay question. None of them were even like, here, A, B, C, D, E, F. But I went, you know what? But I really appreciate this better because he's really asking questions, and because he's just not assuming it's one of these four answers, pick A, B, C, or D, it requires people to actually think.
And he's not trying to guide you. He's not trying to guide you into a particular result either.
Yes.
That's what some idle surveys are for.
And the last question was something like, if you could have whatever you want in terms of helping you do real estate investing, what would that look like? And I was shocked at what came out of me. And I typed something to the effect of, I would want, and I'd be willing to pay somebody who is already a successful real estate investor to do a real estate investment deal with me. Now, I didn't go into all the details, but how do you look for the offer? How do you negotiate the offer? How do you talk to the bank if you need funding? The whole process.
Sure.
But I said, I want somebody to walk me through the whole thing personally, just me, not in a group, me and the expert. That's it.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, if that whole thing was worth nothing except for me connecting with the answer to that last question, that has bubbled up inside of me now for several weeks.
Sure.
And I went, that's what I'm looking for. Because when I want help in something, like especially if it's something I've not been able to be successful at, I want someone who is successful to just walk me through what they do to help me get to the other side. And that's what I want to do for people. And remember, I talked about that months ago, you know, like, let me follow you around in your life and we'll talk through all of your thoughts and your thinking behind what you're doing and how you're doing it, so I could help turn somebody's life upside down or right side up so they can have a happy, successful, joyful, ease-filled life.
I think you can have that. I mean, I'm even going to take issue with what those three marketers you talked about earlier said, because they said, well, there's no way to scale it. I think they're wrong about that. I can think of two off the top of my head, and there's probably more. One way to scale it is a very, very common phenomenon. People see it all the time. It's called a webinar. You basically record a session along the lines of what you were talking about earlier, where you're helping one person get to a point and other people are listening in and so forth. And then you just keep putting that out there over and over again for people to replay. Well, that is reproducible. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I'm just saying there is an example of a way to reproduce what was a very personal kind of attention thing. A second way to do it. Jack Canfield does this. You mentioned Christy Whitman. She does this. Jeanette Ma. There are others in the law of attraction field who are trainers of life coaches and so forth. Their goal is to take their particular method and train other people in that method and then certify them in it. And then now they have a whole army doing their thing, and they're reaching out to a whole bunch of people in whatever methodology they're using. I don't know if they're getting a cut of it or whatever, but the point is they've turned their way of doing something into an army. Well, that's reproducible. So there's two examples. Now, are those the only ones? No, I think there are probably others. But I take issue with their claim that just because you offer a personal service that it can't be reproduced. I think it can be reproduced. The question is, what are your criteria for reproduction? In other words, how accurate does the reproduction has to be? How much does it have to be you providing it personally as opposed to somebody else you've trained?
Well,
there's a lot of factors like that, but still, it is reproducible.
But like teaching, let's say Christy Whitman's program, or Jack Canfield's program, those teach you how to become a law of attraction coach. That's not what I'm talking about, and that's not my service.
I agree.
I want to provide personal coaching for individuals,
right?
Not train people to do it. Because there's already plenty of people who are out there training people to become coaches. But once they set them free to become coaches, then they have to go off and gain the experience. And and that doesn't mean that they've done their own personal work. I want to help people do their personal work.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying that there is a premium to me on the personal touch piece, that I don't have a problem with technology. I love technology.
Mm-hmm.
But where many people, it's funny, many people my age say, oh, technology is so bad because, all you see young people doing is looking at their phones all the time. Yeah, that's true. But I don't judge it as that's bad. I think there's so many positive benefits in it. But I want to be a part of the personal one-on-one touch
Mm-hmm.
method.
Yeah, sure. And I get that. And I think that's perfectly legitimate. And I wasn't making my suggestions to say, well, you have to do one of those things. I was simply trying to kind of open the topic. Like, there are ways to replicate. We just have to be willing to be opened up to the idea that they're out there, and then we'll find them. I don't know what it's going to be for your particular thing. I don't claim to have that knowledge. I just don't want to shut off the idea that it's not reproducible, because I think anything's reproducible. It's just a question of what you're willing to do to reproduce it.
Well, and I found it interesting in my 3 different discussions with 3 different people have been that they've all taken me down the same path.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And
there's almost like a course in that, too. I mean, you can actually get a course in how to become that kind of a person who teaches that kind of marketing. And I'm sure they all took the same kind of course.
Exactly. And it's like, I've already learned all that stuff.
Right.
I was actually looking for somebody to maybe spark an idea that was unique. And I found it interesting that they all were just kind of drilling the same stuff that they had been taught.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they were listening.
No, probably not. Probably not.
And actually that's something that I had just read in this book I read last week called $1 Million Influence. What I got from that book was the art of listening is not something that people employ very much.
No, that is true, unfortunately. Yeah, I've noticed
that.
And
so I've used that in my coaching sessions this week, and I thought, okay, I'm really going to pay attention to being a listener and only speak when it's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Versus what I had done quite a while ago in my past, which was, well, in order for me to prove that I'm valuable to my clients and they'll want to continue to work with me, I have to keep delivering them lots of information.
Right. Yeah.
And what I realized is I was actually over-delivering, and they weren't able to absorb it.
Well, like I said, I don't have a clear idea of what the solution is going to be to find a way to replicate what you're doing. I don't claim that answer. However, I can point you in a direction. And I think it's a direction you probably are already pointed in anyway, but I'll say it just because it fits into the podcast. You don't have to know how it's going to happen. We both know that. All you have to do, because you're so darn good at it, is ask your inner being, direct it. Make it happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. Just make it happen. It's not up to me to figure that part out. And it will.
And I agree. And that is what's happening. And having the discussion here with you today was actually me building the momentum toward the answer, because I was hearing myself for the first time take the culmination of these 3 calls that I've already had and kind of had a cathartic moment by sharing it with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the feeling is even stronger in me now. Like,
well, good.
I do really want the answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the path less traveled.
Very much.
Because the path most traveled is what those 3 people all told me about.
Exactly.
And it was a path I've already gone down. I know that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I want to find the thing. I mean, because, in business, it's what's your unique advantage. And so it's like, my unique thing is the thing that I don't yet know how I'm going to do it, but it's there for me.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, there really is no doubt. It's there. You may not know what it is yet, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. Like you've pointed out to me so many times, the fact that you have the want, the wish, means it's already in your vortex. You just don't know what it is yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's what will set me apart.
In a big way.
And I'm okay with being set apart. I didn't go into this, and I won't go into the big details of it. But this week I was doing some internal work, and I found this sentence pop up inside of me, which is, I don't want to be noticed. And I went, what? Where did that come from? And I realized that has been an undercurrent in my life forever.
I can understand that one. I appreciate that one.
if I have a I don't want to be noticed belief going on in me, how am I going to get discovered?
Well, yeah, exactly. But that doesn't mean you don't have the belief, because I've had that same belief. I think a lot of people have that one.
Well, it was easy to trace back to my mother. I let go of that belief and went, oh, I'm so grateful that came to the surface so that I can be aware of it, so I can let go of it.
That's good.
And I said, okay, so what do I want? And here's what to me was so amazing and so cool. I had the sense that who I am, I'm a shining light. I'm a shining beacon. I'm a shining star. The word shining was a big deal to me.
Yeah, I can tell.
And all of a sudden, I had this memory of a poster that is inside my bedroom closet that I look at every day, but you look at it and you don't see it.
Yeah.
I drew it in 1996 at a Tony Robbins seminar. And it was basically, you drew a picture of your identity. And I drew a picture of a lighthouse. And at the top of the lighthouse, I had like all of these streams of light coming out from the light beam at the top. And each stream had a word on it, like inspiring, encouraging, powerful, thought-provoking. And I went, oh my God, I've always known that I was like a shining beacon. This is not news to me, but I had semi-forgotten it. And this, I don't want to be noticed thing, it has been running concurrently. And I thought, wow, I've had two contradicting beliefs running at the same time. And so sometimes I'm being discovered when I'm focusing more on that. And other times I'm not being discovered when I'm focusing more on, oh, I just want to stay hidden and I don't want anybody to notice me.
Right.
And I just kind of laughed at that and I went, I am so grateful that my inner being brought that to my attention.
Yeah.
So I could play with that and let that go. But hey, Walt, I'm a shining beacon.
How about that?
That's who I really am. But how funny is it and ironic that I have a poster that has been in my bedroom closet for years of the very identity of who I am and who I knew I was back in 1996. And you know what? Nothing's changed. I'm still that woman. I'm still the shining beacon. I'm still the lighthouse. So, those who are wanting navigation in their life, I'm here to shine a light on the route to take. Those who need refuge, that's me. It's like that, because I actually went and Googled, what does a lighthouse do? And I'm like, yeah, I represent all those things. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and actually what did change is that you went through this whole long process of setting that poster up many years before so that you could see it right now when you most needed to see it. So it actually changed very nicely the way it needed to.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that was very cool. So, at the beginning of this podcast, I was kind of thinking that the theme would be about how do you use law of attraction in your everyday life? What does it do for us? And I think all the things that we've shared are definitely examples of how we work with law of attraction.
Constantly, all the time. And it's also an opportunity to remind everybody, first of all, if you're not yet a subscriber, become one, because you get all kinds of good stuff like this coming every single episode. Second of all, if you're already a subscriber, tweet about it. Post it on Facebook. That's what Facebook is for. It's not for the 15-minute tomes. It's for saying, hey, I was just listening to loatoday.net. And that's how we get more people finding out about it. And third, if you ever feel like you're up for it, give a call sometime. All the instructions on how to do all these things are on the homepage at loatoday.net. And Wendy, there are all those other people out there who do need that personal touch. And some of them might even be listening right now. How do they reach out to you?
They can go to my website at wendydillard.com.
And it's just that simple. Well, I have to say, this is one of the more interesting ones that we've done, the more interesting episodes, because we actually went through like 2 or 3 different topics, and once again, they all tied together into one topic. And that topic, I'm not sure how you want to phrase the topic, but in essence, what it comes down to is everything is always working out for me. Didn't we just do that one last time?
That was on Tuesday. But there's evidence of law of attraction in our everyday life.
There is, continuously, all the time. And I can't wait to bring it up on the next time that I talk to you. The only bad part about you doing this is now I only get to talk to you twice a week. But the good part is I get to talk to you next Tuesday. So I look forward to talking to you next Tuesday.
Me too.
And I hope that you'll join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.